You just received a suspension notice from the USPTO. Are you in trouble? You have to go see the principal? What's going on? Hi, I'm JJ, trademark attorney for over 15 years, and in this video, we'll talk about what a suspension notice is from the USPTO and why it can actually be a pro in some cases. Let's begin. So, why is my trademark suspended? There are a couple of reasons why the USPTO will suspend your trademark. Now, suspension doesn't mean that you're in trouble. It just means that it's on hold. That's the best way to put it. It's suspended, it's on hold, it's in suspension, suspended animation, to use a sci-fi term. So that's what's going on right now. So the notice will look like this: suspension notice, no response is required. In other words, it's an automatic action from the USPTO. You don't have to do anything else if you don't want to. And so we'll go through what will trigger a suspension notice and how you can get out of that. Let's begin. There's a potentially conflicting pending trademark application ahead of yours. So a prior filed potentially conflicting pending trademark application. In other words, the USPTO has done their search, examiner has found something, some other applications that were filed ahead of yours that were in the same class and could possibly be a conflict. In other words, if they were registered, the USPTO might cite them as likelihood of confusion, so refuse your trademark for that reasons. And for this reason, they'll put your application on hold. They want to see what's going on with a prior filed application before they actually will address the merits of your trademark application. Not fair, true, but that's the process that's taken. They have priority in terms of filing, so they'll deal with their trademark application first. Secondly, your application was filed under 44D, which is foreign trademark application basis. Because a foreign trademark application is not good enough for a registration in the USPTO, the USPTO will wait until the 44D becomes a 44E. In other words, the foreign trademark application becomes a foreign registration. So the USPTO will suspend your trademark application, assuming everything else is okay, and we'll just wait for that period of time in terms of when the registration of the foreign application is registered. If there is a TTAB or other court proceeding, you can place the application or your current trademark application on hold and have it resolved first before they address your trademark application. And finally, this has to be prompted by the applicant, but if your trademark is cited against some other registrant, in other words, your trademark is refused for likelihood of confusion, which is what the 2D stands for, likelihood of confusion with an existing registered trademark, you can ask the USPTO to suspend your trademark application pending their grace period renewal. In other words, you're hoping that they will not renew the trademark and they've already fallen into the grace period. So during that time, you're asking the USPTO not to pose any deadlines on your trademark application, and let's see what happens to the registrant. If they renew, then another office action is issued again against you. If they don't renew, then you move on, and that registrant, cited registrant, will be removed. So, how do I get out of suspension? There's a couple of automatic ways that the USPTO will automatically take you out of suspension. Number one, the prior filed application has either registered or has been abandoned. In either case, it's going to issue an office action. Then you have another time frame deadlines associated with that. Or if it's abandoned, then your application will move on through the process. The TTAB or court proceeding has completed. There's an order from the TTAB or court proceeding saying that this has been resolved in this direction or what direction. The examining attorney will review it, and then that will take you out of suspension in an office action, or continuation of your trademark application will proceed at that point. The cited 2D registrant has been canceled or renewed. Again, when we mentioned about the grace period, if the cited 2D registrant during the grace period has either renewed it, that'll trigger another office action against you, or if it's been canceled during your application, we'll move on to the next stage. So how can the applicant, you as the applicant, take your application out of suspension? Now, remember, all of these are automatic from the USPTO that I previously mentioned, but they don't happen right away. Sometimes it can take up to 6 months when the examining attorney re-reviews them. Now, if you noticed that the registrant in some of these cases or the prior file application has already been abandoned, you don't want to necessarily wait for the examining attorney to review it after 3 or 6 months and say, oh, okay, it looks like they're abandoned. You probably want your application moved right away. So you can actually submit a suspension inquiry or try to take your application out of suspension by actually actively submitting to the USPTO saying, hey, this prior filed application has been abandoned or registered, either cite an office action or remove us from suspension. So the foreign trademark application has been registered. USPTO will send out suspension inquiries every 6 months stating, hey, has your foreign registration or application been registered? And you have to respond to those inquiries. And if you don't, then your application could be abandoned for failing to respond to the office action. So be sure to keep up to date in terms of what the USPTO is offering notices. And this is an active response that has to be done by the applicant. And the cited to the, in terms of, just as I mentioned before, if it's in the grace period, if it's registered, or if it's renewed, if it's canceled, sorry, if the registration has been canceled or renewed, it's going to take you out of suspension either by moving you to the next phase, or it should trigger another office action. So there you have it. And then there's also an opportunity that you can actually argue against likelihood of confusion that these prior pending trademark applications are not going to cause confusion with your trademark application. Now, there's a bit of a warning. There's inconsistencies with the USPTO. They're supposed to review it and then review the merits of it. Lately, we're worried because sometimes they will just automatically put you in suspension with the argument, not looking at the argument until the prior pending trademark application has been reviewed. So it just really depends on the circumstance, and it's not consistent either way. So I don't want to say the USPTO tends to treat it one way or another. They're supposed to look at it, but sometimes just because they're so busy, they may just wait until the prior pending application, something happens to them or that. So some pros of suspension. In some circumstances, let's start with this. The USPTO has shortened the time frame of office actions from 6 months to 3 months, and they've just recently implemented this a year ago. And so in this case, in this scenario, a suspension may offer you additional time to prepare your arguments or response to the examining attorney or the USPTO. So it does give you no deadline, which is actually helpful. The pro is it allows during this time frame for the registrant to either enter the grace period or to cancel if they are no longer using the mark in commerce. So it gives you more time to figure out whether or not the registrant is going to actually renew the application if they're close to it. It may not be that long, but it just depends on how long the suspension is. And there's no deadline and time pressure. That way there's not a creeping deadline that will abandon your trademark application. You have all the time until you're taken out of suspension. And your application is still in line for registration. In other words, it's still there and it's still live. So you have that going for it, and your money's not wasted, so to speak, if it has been abandoned prematurely. So cons, of course, is that the uncertainty of trademark registration. You file the application to have your trademark registered so you have greater protection. There's some level of uncertainty, especially of whether or not if it's going to get registered. And it will depend on the prior pending trademark application or these other factors. So there's uncertainty there. The delays, of course, it's going to delay your application reaching registration, assuming everyone does clear out. And finally, you could be in line for a long time. We've seen trademark applications where there was almost 10 prior filed applicants ahead of theirs. And I've told the prospects, you're going to be waiting years. I think one of our clients was in suspension for about 5 years. So it's not unusual for suspensions to last a long time. And you have to consider, once you're in suspension, how close is it to registration? How close is the prior pending application to registration? Is there a reasonable time frame for your application to reach registration? Or should I think of something else and go with a new trademark application? So there you have it. In a summary, that's what the notice of suspension means for a trademark application. But for more tips and tricks and trademark news, please visit our website at tmtelegram.com. That's TM as in trademark, telegram.com. And until next time, keep your brand safe and protected. Have a great day. Bye-bye.